From the moment the Holdovers starts to flicker in with this old school classic logo, you feel like you went back in time and a warm blanket wrapped you up and transported you to a simpler world. With characters and a plot that feels like it was pulled straight out of the 70s, with a cantankerous old professor, Paul Giamatti, set in his ideological ways, and a brilliant but troubled student, Dominic Sessa, who end up stuck together for the holidays with the cook of the school, Mary, Da'Vine Joy Randolph. Both Paul Giamatti and Da'Vine Joy Randolph are up for Oscars for their performance in this film. But this is exactly what cinematographer Igor Brild was going for, saying, "One of the things that I think works so well in a lot of the 70s movies is the way the shots are designed. A lot of it is about the point of view. Are you inside the scene? Are you with them? Is there an intimacy with the camera and the access? Or are you outside and sort of looking at it? And that makes it always something that you have to be aware of." To add to that was the beautiful film emulation that we will have to talk about in another video, and the audio editing to make the dialogue sound older.
Not for ourselves alone are we born.
But with excellent and hilarious insults from the professor and a good back and forth between the cast that makes this film charmingly humorous, it's the small, meaningful moments in between that really make this film special and leave the viewer to contemplate the many open-ended questions that the director leaves you with. And it's with this mindset that we take a look at the 5 scenes we think make the Holdovers deserving of a Best Picture nomination.
No, he was a great kid. I had him one semester. Very insightful.
He hated you. He said you were a real asshole.
Our first scene is where the Holdovers starts to show that maybe not everyone in this film is a complete hateable character.
Hey! That's what you get for ratting me out, you little Mormon!
It begins with a close-up of a crying Yejun Park that quickly shifts to Angus, who is awakened by the sound. Yejun confides in Angus that he has had a nightmare. He then shares that his brothers attended Barton, but Yejun simply wishes to return home.
But I miss my family, and I have no friends.
It's here that we first see the softer side of Angus's character as he comforts his fellow dorm mate, and at the same time we also get a glimpse into the fact that Angus, too, may not be free from his own worries and anxieties.
Friends are overrated. I'll help you hide the sheets in the morning, all right?
And this is a common occurrence throughout the beginning of the film, from the 3 main characters to the side characters. Many are facing dark and complicated realities in life, varying in nature. Good writers know that characters in a narrative can't be the same person by the end of the story, just as we all move through life and are not the same person we were before. And while big life events can drastically change us, it's more often than not that the small things and small moments like this scene are what gradually change who we are. Yes, Angus has essentially been abandoned by his family for the holidays at this point.
I'm just supposed to stay here. Mom, please don't do this.
And in the film, they've given a few breadcrumbs that point to some other hard family issues which help us to understand early on why Angus is acting out. But it's in this moment that Angus also realizes that he's not the only one with painful realities to deal with. And instead of acting with the same selfish mentality that his family abandoned him with, his peers berate him with, and his professor judges him with,
Oh yes, I know a couple of these reprobates.
Angus acts with the kindness that he's never received. And that's exactly how this film was written. Small moments that slowly change the characters, but don't give them all the answers at once. And while this scene does give us a glimpse into a different side of Angus than we've seen to this point, it's hardly the biggest turn his character makes. In a movie that speaks so quietly, perhaps the most loud scene in the film is when Angus dislocates his shoulder. It's here about a third of the way into the film that Angus reaches his, breaking point. Attempting to make an outside phone call and book a hotel room, he's caught by Paul. Paul's threats of detention after detention are hopeless as Angus runs away.
Son of a bitch, that's another detention!
Paul gives chase, which this in and of itself is pure comedy. Paul Giamatti screaming about detention, scrambling after a boy less than half his age. For most of us, this is the Paul Giamatti we've come to know and love since his Big Fat Liar days.
Rotten kids!
I'm getting on in years. So the running was like, wow. And up and down stairs and stuff like that. So it was, what you're seeing is really my actual exhaustion as I'm coming in. No, it was great. And he does that cartwheel. It was inventive because it was kind of cartoony. It was great. It was like a crazy cartoon chase.
I'll wash my hands. Hear me? Wash my hands.
After a short chase, Angus reaches the gym. Closed for the winter, this place is a forbidden land for the school holdovers, and yet in an almost biblical moment, Angus steps into the forbidden, crossing a moral line.
Do not cross the Rubicon.
Ultimately, this scene begins to break down everything we've known to be true about the standards of what a Barton man should be. We've seen the wild and untamed behavior in the dormitories. We've seen it out and about away from the classrooms. But here, Angus looks his authority straight in the eye and defies him anyway.
Alea jacta est.
And in a way, it's here that we realize why director Payne has made the film and is now breaking the film. And we hope that towards the end, he will build the film back up again. But before the film can get built back up again, Payne breaks it down even more in the Christmas party scene. And if you dig through Reddit and some other articles that have been coming out, you'll see some debate as to whether or not Davine Joy Randolph is deserving of the awards recognition she's been receiving for her role as Mary. And perhaps the debate stems from how we've typically seen grief portrayed in Hollywood. Oftentimes it's very dramatic, maybe even over the top at times. But here, Randolph portrays grief in a much more subtle way.
Here, Curtis gave his life valiantly in the service of his country. Please know that we accompany you in your grief.
In regards to going down this journey of a person who's experiencing grief, the beautiful thing that I think people don't understand as much is that grief has many different faces. It's not just super sad. If anything, grief can somewhat make you feel out of control.
Did you know that Curtis used to love audition?
And really what serves this scene well is the writing of David Hemmingson. And what Hemmingson does here is what every screenwriter is taught early on. Get in late, get out early. The ending of the sequence in the kitchen is so succinct and yet incredibly impactful. Hemmingson writes,
He's good.
No more brave face, real grief in real time. The enormity of her heartbreak leaves the men speechless. While the Christmas party kitchen scene stays mostly distant in its framing of its characters, the next scene on our list has the opposite approach. The restaurant scene in Boston starts with a close-up of Angus's face that slowly pulls away, revealing the restaurant's surroundings. If this shot reminds you at all of the opening scene of The Godfather, there's a good reason. Payne himself said, "The shot that I am sort of proud of is Angus's explanation of what happened to his father, and it starts on a tight close-up and zooms back, which was stolen from the first shot of The Godfather, or let's call it inspired by, or don't say it at all and make them think I thought of it. I mean, no shot's entirely original."
What kind of a fascist hash foundry are you running here?
In fact, not only is this shot technically impressive, but the take you see in the film was the first take Mark Johnson argued that this was Angus's or Dominic Sessa's most impressive scene.
Arguably his most impressive scene or hardest scene is right after he sees his father in the restaurant, and it's a long continuous shot on him.
He used to be fine. He's better than fine. He was great.
When he talks about, quite frankly, opens up his heart and soul.
That's why she wants a whole new life. It's easy to just stash me away in boarding school. Like half of us are just stashed away there.
That's the first take that we have in
take
here.
one.
That's amazing.
He knew it perfectly, and that's his performance.
The funny thing is, I wanted to see him so bad this whole time. But I also didn't, So I'm afraid that's what's gonna happen to me one day.
I look at it every time, and just my jaw drops.
In this shot, Angus is speaking about his dad's condition and his fear of becoming like his dad, to which Paul replies,
No one is his own father. I'm not my dad, no matter how hard he tried to beat that idea into me.
Which is perhaps the most explicit statement in the entire film. And it sums up one of the central themes of the film, that our grief does not define us. No matter what the pattern may have been before us, no matter our history, we each can pave our own path in this life. This is the very same theme that Ye Jun begins to learn in the first scene we mentioned, the nightmare scene. It's the same theme that Mary is coming to discover as the film goes on. Not only does Hemmingson present this theme masterfully, but he also exits this conversation perfectly. Just as Paul is finishing his final thought, Mary shows up and he interrupts himself to tell Angus to stand.
Not have to dictate your destiny. Oh, there's Mary.
What?
Stand up for the lady, you boor.
Our final scene is, well, the final scene. What's striking about this scene is just how few things are said. So much has happened in the span of 2 weeks, so much bonding, so much drama, so much healing. And when we get to this point, Paul has just sacrificed the job he loves to protect Angus so he can remain at Barton.
You did this to yourself, Hunnam, not me.
Yet there is no thank you in this scene. In fact, the most powerful exchange in this whole scene is 2 words repeated by each character. Barton man.
Barton man.
Barton man.
Because it's here that we realize that being a Barton man isn't about telling the truth no matter what. Being a Barton man is about standing up for the man next to you. They lock eyes, they want a hug, but instead they just shake hands. Angus abruptly starts running back to campus.
See ya.
Payne presents so much meaning in this scene in such a short and simple way. Perhaps this is what Payne does best in his film. He does just enough. No more, no less. But another film that probably did way too much was the 1970 film Dune, that was abandoned before it was even made. This 14-hour film was an absolutely crazy production process, and you should check out that story right here.